My name is Maya Sterling, and for the last 7 years, I have built a life out of the grease and gears of the New Jersey logistics industry. I am a freight dispatcher, the person who keeps the 18-wheelers moving when the rest of the world is asleep. And I do not have room in my schedule for ghosts. Rain was lashing against the windshield of my pickup when I saw them standing near the terminal gate. 2 shivering figures looking like drowned rats against the backdrop of my fleet. My mother, Beverly, stepped into the beam of my headlights, waving her arms with the same frantic entitlement she used to command in our kitchen in Phoenix. I killed the engine, stepped out into the freezing downpour, and let the heavy door of my truck slam shut with a metallic ring that echoed through the quiet yard. Beverly did not ask how I was. She just pointed a trembling finger at the gate and shouted, "Maya, thank God you are here. We have been waiting for hours, and I need $2,000 right now to get our car out of the impound lot." Sierra stood behind her, huddling under a thin designer jacket that was never meant for a Jersey winter, and scoffed. "This place smells like diesel and failure. How can you even breathe here?" I did not move to hug them. Instead, I leaned against my fender, crossed my arms over my reflective vest, and said, "The only thing I smell is the $5,000 in unpaid credit card debt you ran up using my social security number last month." Beverly's face hardened, her desperate facade slipping as she stepped closer into my personal space and hissed, "I am your mother. I gave you life. So you owe me more than just a few $1,000s and a place to sleep tonight." Sierra rolled her eyes, checking her damp hair and her phone screen, and added, "Seriously, Maya, don't be dramatic. You clearly have the money. So just give us the keys to your spare room and stop acting like a manager." I reached into my pocket, pulled out a thick envelope containing the legal notice of a debt buyout I had orchestrated weeks ago, and handed it to my mother. "I did not come here to give you keys," I said, my voice cutting through the rain like a blade. "I came here to tell you that I bought your debt, which means I am now the one you answer to. And my spare room is not for rent." I stood in the center of our cramped kitchen 6 years ago, holding the temporary paper version of my commercial driver's license like it was a winning lottery ticket. The ink was still fresh, representing months of double shifts and secret driving lessons with Grant Sullivan. My only way out of a life defined by minimum wage and maximum guilt. Beverly walked in, drying her hands on a dish towel, and frowned at the paper as she asked, "What is that piece of trash you are smiling at?" I straightened my spine and said, "It is my CDL. Mom, I passed the test, and I have a job lined up starting Monday, driving cross-country." Beverly snatched the paper from my hands before I could pull it back, her eyes scanning the text not with pride, but with panic. She crumpled the corner and said, "You are not going anywhere. Because who is going to cook dinner and pay the electric bill if you are halfway to Texas?" Sierra looked up from painting her nails at the table, laughed a sharp, cruel sound, and said, "Look at her. She thinks she can actually drive a big rig. You are just a dirty truck driver." "Maya." I stepped forward to grab it back, saying, "This is my career, not a hobby. And I am not asking for permission anymore." Beverly didn't just crumple it. She ripped the document down the middle with a violence that made the sound crack like a whip in the small room. She threw the confetti-like pieces onto the linoleum floor and shouted, "You are ungrateful. I raised you to take care of this family, not to abandon us for some highway fantasy." I looked down at the shredded proof of my hard work, felt my heart hammer against my ribs, and said quietly, "You didn't raise a daughter. You raised an insurance policy. And it just expired." Sierra kicked one of the paper scraps toward me and sneered, "Good luck living in a truck. Loser. Don't come crawling back when you get lonely." I knelt down and picked up every single piece of that torn paper. placing them carefully into a grease-stained Ziploc bag I pulled from the drawer. I stood up, grabbed the duffel bag I had packed that morning, and walked to the back door without looking at their shocked faces. Beverly yelled after me, "If you walk out that door, Maya, you are dead to this family." I stopped with my hand on the knob, looked back one last time, and replied, "I was dead the moment I stayed. This is me finally breathing." I spent 5 years climbing from the driver's seat to the dispatch tower, mastering the complex logistics of freight while my mother mastered the art of identity theft. The alert from the credit bureau hit my phone during a chaotic midnight shift, warning me of a $5,000 payday loan application processed in my name from an IP address in our old neighborhood. I called the lending agency immediately, cutting off the agent's standard greeting to say, "My name is Maya Sterling. I did not authorize that application, and you are currently recording a crime in progress." The agent stammered, "Ma'am, the applicant provided your social security number and mother's maiden name." To which I replied, "Exactly. Flag it for fraud and send the rejection letter to the applicant." I dialed Beverly's number next, listening to the ringtone with the cold detachment of a judge delivering a verdict. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with false cheer as she asked, "Maya, did you get a notification? It was just a mistake with the paperwork." I leaned back in my ergonomic chair and said, "Forging a signature isn't a paperwork error. Beverly, it is a federal crime that carries prison time." She dropped the act instantly, snapping, "I needed that money to cover the mortgage because Sierra's studio isn't profitable yet. Are you really going to put your mother in jail over money?" Sierra snatched the phone before I could answer, her voice piercing through the speaker like a siren. "You are so selfish," she screamed. "I have clients coming tomorrow and the power company is threatening to cut us off because Mom used the bill money for her online slots." I checked the public foreclosure listings on my second monitor and said calmly, "That sounds like a personal problem. Sierra, maybe you should sell your designer camera gear to pay the electric bill." She gasped, "You want me to ruin my career?" And I replied, "You don't have a career. You have a hobby that I am finished financing." The silence on the line was heavy, broken only by Beverly sobbing in the background about how ungrateful I had become. "I am not ungrateful," I said. "I am legally severing ties so you don't drag me down when your house of cards finally collapses." Beverly shouted, "We will lose the house if you don't sign this loan." And I said, "You already lost the house." "Beverly, the bank auction is scheduled for next Tuesday." I waited for the reality to sink in, listening to their panicked breathing on the other end of the line. "You knew?" Beverly whispered, her voice trembling with genuine fear for the first time. "I know everything," I said, watching a fleet of trucks leave the yard. "And I also know that if you try to use my name one more time, the next call won't be from me. It will be from the district attorney." I hung up the phone and blocked the number, turning my attention back to the map where my drivers were moving forward, leaving the wreckage behind. The roar of the terminal yard fell silent as Beverly and Sierra stormed past the security gate, Beverly waving a crumpled eviction notice while Sierra filmed the scene on her phone to stream live. Beverly screamed over the idling engines, "Everyone needs to know that this rich manager lets her own mother and sister sleep on the street while she sits in a tower." I stepped down from the loading dock, signaling my drivers to cut their engines, and asked loudly, "Are you done performing for an audience? Or should I call the fraud department right now?" Sierra shoved her phone camera inches from my face and sneered, "Say hi to the world, Maya, the sister who thinks she is too good to help her own blood." I didn't bat an eye at the lens. Instead, I pulled a thick file from my clipboard and held the documents up for the camera to clearly focus on. This is a sworn affidavit from the bank confirming that you two forged my signature on 3 separate loan applications, totaling $15,000. I stated with absolute clarity. Beverly's face went pale. Her shouting instantly strangled in her throat as she stammered. That is a misunderstanding. Maya. We were going to pay it back once Sierra's channel took off. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a dangerous, icy calm, and said, Identity theft isn't a misunderstanding. Beverly, it is a felony. And I have the police on speed dial. One of my drivers, a burly man named Mike, chuckled from his cab and called out, Sounds like you spent the money on designer jackets instead of rent. Boss. Sierra spun around, her face flushing a deep, angry red, and yelled, Shut up, you dirty mechanic. You don't know anything about us, I cut her off sharply. He knows the value of an honest day's work, which is something neither of you has ever experienced in your lives. Beverly grabbed Sierra's arm, trying to pull her back as the reality of the situation set in, and whispered frantically, Maya, please, don't do this here. We can talk about this in private. We are done talking in private because you steal in private, I said, throwing 2 standard employment contracts onto a wooden crate between us. You have 2 choices right now. You can sign these contracts to work as janitorial staff in this terminal to pay off your debt. Or I hand this file to the police. Sierra looked at the contract like it was radioactive waste and shrieked, I am not cleaning toilets for you. I am an influencer. I crossed my arms and replied, Then you can clean toilets in the state penitentiary. Sierra, because those are your only 2 options. Beverly stared at the contract, then at me, her eyes searching for the daughter she used to bully, but finding only the boss she now owed. You would really send your mother to jail? She asked, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. I picked up a heavy-duty push broom leaning against the wall and held it out to her, locking eyes with the woman who once shredded my future. Beverly, you tore up my ticket out of here. So now I am handing you a broom, I said cold and hard. Choose right now, labor or prison. The silence in the yard was absolute until Beverly slowly reached out, her manicured hands shaking violently, and took the broom handle. Sierra burst into tears, dropping her phone to the concrete, and wailed, I hate you. I hate you so much. I turned my back on them to check a shipping manifest and said over my shoulder, Clock in is at 6 a.m. sharp. And if you are 1 minute late, I make the call. Sierra didn't last 3 days in the warehouse before she tried to flip the script, cornering me in the break room with her phone recording while I was pouring coffee. I am live right now telling everyone how you abuse your power, she sneered, thrusting the camera at my face. My followers know you are a monster who enslaves her own family. I took a slow sip of black coffee, looked directly into the lens, and said, Your followers are about to see something much more interesting than my break schedule. I pulled my tablet from my vest pocket and tapped the screen, casting the footage from the terminal's security system onto the break room's large safety monitor. The video played in high definition, showing Sierra digging through Beverly's purse in the locker room just 2 hours ago. Pocketing a wad of cash before checking her reflection, Beverly gasped from the doorway, dropping her mop bucket with a loud clatter as she watched her favorite daughter steal her first paycheck. You stole my tip money, Beverly whispered, her voice cracking with betrayal. I worked a double shift scrubbing floors for that cash. Sierra lowered her phone, the live stream still running to a silent audience, and stammered, Mom, it wasn't like that. I just needed it for a cab because my feet hurt. It is exactly like that, I said, terminating the connection to her live stream and stepping between them. Sierra has been draining you dry for years. Mom, And you just caught her doing it on 4K video. I turned to Sierra, whose face was crumbling under the weight of exposure, and added, I have also flagged your social media accounts for fraudulent charity solicitation, so that income stream is gone too. Sierra threw her phone onto the table and screamed, You planned this! You want me to have nothing! I nodded calmly and replied, I want you to have nothing so you can finally learn how to earn something. I pointed to the pile of neon orange safety vests and gray industrial coveralls sitting on the bench next to them. No more designer clothes in my warehouse. I ordered, checking my watch. It is a safety violation, and frankly, you can't afford dry cleaning anymore. Beverly picked up a vest, looking at Sierra with a mixture of disgust and resignation, and said, Put it on. Sierra. Before she calls the cops for the theft I just saw. Sierra sobbed as she pulled the rough fabric over her arms. And I walked to the door, saying, Welcome to the workforce. Ladies, break time is over. It has been exactly 1 year since the day I handed my mother a broom, and the view from my dispatch tower has changed significantly. Down in the sweltering heat of the cargo yard, Beverly and Sierra were no longer screaming insults or demanding money. They were sweating through their gray coveralls, power washing the grime off a fleet of flatbeds. I walked down the metal stairs, the sound of my boots heavy on the grating, and approached them as Sierra paused to wipe grease from her forehead with a trembling hand. You missed a spot on the rear axle. Sierra, I said, pointing to the mud caked on the tire. And in this business, details are the difference between a paycheck and a penalty. Sierra didn't roll her eyes or pull out her phone. She simply nodded, her spirit broken in the best possible way, and muttered, Yes, ma'am. I will get it right now. Beverly straightened up, her back stiff from hours of labor, and looked at me with eyes that had lost their manipulative gleam, replaced by the dull exhaustion of reality. We are almost done with the shift. Maya, she said quietly, wiping her hands on a rag. Can we sign out 10 minutes early to catch the express bus? I checked my clipboard and replied, You sign out when the job is done. Mom, just like everyone else who earns their keep in this world. I didn't offer them a ride home or a loan to make their lives easier, because saving them again would only destroy the fragile progress they had made. They had finally learned that survival requires sweat, not schemes. And that was the only inheritance I was ever going to give them. Keep working, I said, turning away from the women who once owned me. I have a schedule to keep and a route that won't drive itself. I walked toward the brand new Peterbilt 579 parked at the gate, its chrome gleaming under the New Jersey sun. A beast of a machine that belonged entirely to me. I climbed into the driver's seat, the engine humming a low, powerful note that vibrated through my chest, signaling the start of my new project in California. I watched them one last time in the rearview mirror, two small gray figures fading into the background of the terminal, finally small enough to manage. I released the air brakes with a sharp hiss, shifted into gear, and whispered to the empty cab. This is what freedom sounds like. The road ahead was wide open, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't driving away from something. I was driving toward everything. Thank you for riding along with me on this journey through the wreckage and the rebuilding of a life. If my story reminded you of your own battles, remember that a family title is not a license to steal your future or your peace. Setting boundaries isn't hate. It is the highest form of self-respect. And sometimes handing someone a broom is the kindest thing you can do. Don't let anyone, no matter who they are, tear up the ticket to your dreams or guilt you into staying small. If you believe in the power of earning your own way, hit that subscribe button and share this story to fuel someone else's drive.